One of the most useful innovations of the colonizers was pottery making, which was quite unknown to Irish hunter-gatherers. The pottery was probably made by shaping clay into a ball with the hand, and then hollowing it until the walls were the right thickness. After firing, the outside was often polished. This would have helped the pots to retain water, as they weren't glazed. Now we know that the clay used usually came from local sources, which suggests that manufacture was on a fairly small scale, even though thousands of fragments are usually found at Neolithic sites.
Modern cargo handling methods have had a significant effect on employees. The business of moving freight around the world becomes increasingly streamlined. Manufacturers of computers, for instance, are able to import software from overseas, rather than having to rely on a local supplier. The introduction of container ships has meant that bulk cargo can be safely and efficiently moved over long distances. While international shipping is now efficient, there is still a need for governments to reduce freight in order to free up the domestic cargo sector.
As researchers on aging noted recently, no treatment on the market today has been proved to slow human aging, the buildup of molecular and cellular damage that increases vulnerability to infirmity as we grow older. But one intervention, consumption of a low-calorie yet nutritionally balanced diet, works incredibly well in a broad range of animals, increasing longevity and prolonging good health. Those findings suggest that caloric restriction could delay aging and increase longevity in humans too.
Bullying is clearly unpleasant and can make the child experiencing it feel unworthy and depressed. In extreme cases, it can even lead to suicide, though this is thankfully rare. Victimized pupils are more likely to experience difficulties with interpersonal relationships as adults, while children who persistently bully are more likely to grow up to be physically violent and convicted of antisocial offenses.
Food handlers are those concerned with preparing and serving unwrapped food. Food handlers should report any instance of sickness, diarrhea, and/or stomach upset experienced either while at work or during a holiday to a member of the personnel management team. Any infections of ear, nose, throat, mouth, chest or skin should also be reported to a member of the personnel management team. Food handlers need to have an annual dental examination by the company dentist. Alternatively, a current certificate of dental fitness may be produced from their own dentist. This applies to all permanent staff who handle food.
Agriculture consumes about 70% of the world's fresh water, so improvements in irrigation can make the greatest impact. At present, average efficiency in the use of irrigated water in agriculture may be as low as 50%. Simple changes could improve the rate substantially, though it is unrealistic to expect very high levels of water use efficiency in many developing countries, faced as they are with a chronic lack of capital and a largely untrained rural workforce. After agriculture, industry is the second biggest user of water and, in terms of value added per litre used, is 60 times more productive than agriculture. However, some industrial processes use vast amounts of water. For example, production of 1 kilogram of aluminium might require 1,500 liters of water. Paper production too is often very water intensive. Though new processes have greatly reduced consumption, there is still plenty of room for big savings in industrial uses of water.
The person who became interested in taking the moving pictures to its next step was the famous American inventor Thomas Edison. Actually, he didn't do the work himself but rather asked young Scotsmen in his employ to design a system, which he did. Now this young fellow was clever because the first thing he did was study other systems, primitive as they were, of moving pictures and then put all the existing technologies together to make Q32 the first entire motion picture system. He designed a camera, a projection device and the film. The system was first shown in New York in 1894 and was really very popular. Apparently people lined up around the block to see the wonderful new invention. There were, however, a couple of problems with the system. The camera weighed over 200 kilograms and only one person at a time could see the film.
If you visit the Canadian Arctic, you immediately appreciate the problems faced by people for whom this is home. It would clearly be impossible for the people to engage in farming as a means of supporting themselves. For thousands of years they have had to rely on catching fishes and mammals as a means of sustenance. The harsh surroundings saw many who tried to settle their push to their limits, although some were successful. The Thule people were an example of the latter, and for them the environment did not prove unmanageable. For the present inhabitants, life continues to be a struggle. The territory of Nunavut consists of little more than ice, rock, and a few islands. In recent years, many of them have been obliged to give up their nomadic lifestyle, but they continue to depend mainly on nature for their food and clothes. Meat produce is particularly expensive.
Over the last half-century, the pace of change in the life of human beings has increased beyond our wildest expectations. This has been driven by technological and scientific breakthroughs that are changing the whole way we view the world on an almost daily basis. This means that change is not always a personal option, but an inescapable fact of life, and we need to constantly adapt to keep pace with it. Those people who believe they have achieved some security by doing the same, familiar things are living in denial. Even when people believe they are resisting change themselves, they cannot stop the world around them from changing. Sooner or later they will find that the familiar jobs no longer exist, or that the safe patterns of behavior are no longer appropriate.
All wounds carry a risk of infection. Dirty wounds in particular carry a risk of tetanus infection. The bacteria that cause tetanus are present in the soil and in animal feces. If they get into a wound, they multiply very rapidly. Tetanus is a serious, potentially fatal condition. It can cause muscle spasms and leads to lockjaw. It can be prevented by a tetanus injection. Have regular tetanus injections. A booster is recommended every 5 years. Always check that you are covered after any injury where the skin is broken.